Morning and welcome to members, officers, members of the press and any members of the public joining this meeting of Cabinet taking place on Tuesday, the 22nd of July, 2025. I'd like to start by formally welcoming Paul Martin, our new interim chief executive, to this first Cabinet meeting here at Newham Council. As colleagues will know, Paul brings extensive experience to the role and will be driving the best value improvements required as we deliver on our building a fairer Newham mission for local residents. As always, I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and for those officers that may be supporting the presentation of reports but online, welcome. Similarly, those councillors that might be watching this meeting of formal cabinet, they won't be able to present or contribute to any item moved or second a motion or vote, and attendance will not be officially recorded. As before, with regards to etiquette, can I please ask that you indicate if you wish to by raising your hand, and if you are on the Zoom, please hand symbol on the Zoom dashboard. And as a reminder, similarly, for those members and officers talking to any items at today's Cabinet meeting, please introduce yourself when ahead of you speaking on the substantive report that you wish to discuss. And then can I just finally advise colleagues that there is a supplementary agenda that sets out the correct report for agenda item 11, grant funding award from Warm Homes Social Housing 2025-2028, and a revised report for agenda item 12, independent living support service contract award. Right, so on that note, let's get cracking. Firstly, can I just receive from Clerk to the committee, Joy, are there any formal apologies for absence that have been received?
Yes, Chair, I've received apologies from Councillor John Morris.
All right, thank you very much. Any other Cabinet or executive colleagues, are there any other apologies that need to be noted? Nope. Okay, declarations of interest. Please note the items that we're going to be considering this morning, and in line with the Members' Code of Conduct set out across pages 7 and 8, this is the time for members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests they may have in any matter being considered at this meeting, having regard to the guidance attached to the agenda. So can I formally ask, are there any declarations of interest that need to be made on any items being discussed? No. There are no declarations of interest, Joy, thank you. And then moving on to minutes of decisions made at the formal meeting of Cabinet, 17th of June, and those are set out across pages 9 to 18. Can I just have agreement that this is an accurate record of decisions taken? Is that agreed? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. And then as it relates to appointments to outside bodies, just want to update Cabinet that following Councillor Rohit Dasgupta's election to be Chair of Council, I will be appointing Councillor Shani McLean to the Asper's Good Causes Fund as a representative as part of our external bodies appointments process. So can that be noted? And a future Cabinet meeting, I will be making some further announcements as it relates to the standing advisory committee on religious education. But that will be advising in September. So colleagues, moving on to the first major report. The first is the delivering best value for our residents and colleagues. This is the paper that has already been presented to full council. It relates to the non-statutory best value notice that were issued on the 8th May, and it sets out our formal response to the best value notice, non-statutory best value notice issued by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. It's important to acknowledge that whilst this was a non-statutory notice, it's a clear call for accelerated progress and action as it relates to governance matters, financial controls, as it relates to financial sustainability, given the scale of temporary accommodation and social care costs, and also organisational culture. Our response, working with the Independent Transformation and Improvement Board here at Newham Council, which is chaired by the independent expert, Mr. Rob Whiteman, alongside several independent experts that bring a wealth of experience, sector knowledge and experience to bear in enabling and supporting the Corporate Leadership Board and the Chief Executive, now being led by Paul Martin, across our response and driving forward. We're very clear that this is a serious point for the organisation, and we are intending to respond to it confidently, with courage and with openness, because ultimately and rightly we are here in the service of our residents and they deserve best value in everything that we do. The report itself provides a integrated action plan outlining 15 key improvement areas, including strengthening decision-making, sharpening financial planning and embedding a more accountable and open culture across the council. There are instances as set out in different sections of the report where we set out the governance changes that we've made, clarifying cabinet responsibilities, establishing new internal audit capacity, and launching a member development programme focused on best value principles. It's fair to say that as a political leadership team, myself and all of my cabinet members embrace the non-statutory best value notice wholeheartedly and will work very hard in our roles in driving forward that. Similarly, as it relates to our engagement with all aspects of the non-statutory best value relating to financial sustainability, member officer relations, and also broader governance issues. On the point of finance, we are delivering a, albeit challenging, savings programme. It is a savings programme nonetheless, 80 million over the medium term, but also improving financial oversight, forecasting and transparency. It is really important for all of us to state independently in our practice as professionals and in the service to our residents that we are not approaching this as a tick box exercise. This will indelibly characterise and colour everything that we do and is the lens that we apply as we discharge our public duty on behalf of our residents. It provides an opportunity to rebuild public trust, because we've got to accept public trust will have been broken or shaken at the very least, and we need to hold true and demonstrate and evidence that we are truly delivering value for our residents through every single penny and pound that we spend. Culture is going to be, we've got to model the behaviours that we want to see, and we are determined that we embark on these right steps and we continue with our openness in learning, seeking advice, drawing down on what the government is asking of us, and more important, what the independent voluntary improvement and performance board led by Rob Whiteman is asking of us. As I said, let's be courageous. Let's not shy away from our accountabilities. And on that note, I'm going to commend this report to full council, sorry, not full council, to cabinet. And at this juncture, I'm going to be passing over to Paul Martin for his reflections, appreciating this is his day 3. And then I will also invite colleagues from the Corporate Leadership Board if they wish to say anything relating to this report, and then we'll go to questions.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the welcome. I'd like to start by saying how pleased I am to be here in Newham as your interim chief executive, and to have the opportunity to serve and support the borough during this important period. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody, and at day 3, I can say I've had a lot of interesting and important conversations with colleagues in this room and outside. As we you've invited me to say something about the best value notice, I think the first thing to say about it is that it's a sort of fork in a road which can go in 2 different points during 2026. So it is a non-statutory notice intervention, do you say, Mayor? And there are 2 possible routes next year. One is that the government's concerns, MHCLG's concerns, grow, and that they conclude that there needs to be a form of statutory intervention, imposition potentially of commissioners in Newham. That's one plausible outcome. And the other second plausible outcome is that they step it down, and they say, on the basis of evidence and the progress the council has made since the notice was published, they're content that this can now be stepped down. It's a binary thing. It's going to be one or the other. And I'm believing that everybody in this room, all officers of the council and all members, wish to see us take the second of those options, for it to be stepped down sufficient that MHLG can see. Although there will certainly be challenges, there always will be in local government and in London boroughs, that the council has that in hand in a reasonable way. So I think that, the right level of progress does not mean that everything will be perfect, because it isn't perfect in any council, and that would be unrealistic. But we've made sufficient progress. So if I speak the language of prevention and early intervention, which means a lot in the local authority generally, we're thinking about children's services or adult social care or addressing homelessness, we all know that prevention and early intervention is better than crisis response. We have an opportunity in front of us for that earlier intervention that says our attention has been brought to these 3 points that are in 110, and we've got an opportunity to use that in a preventative way to address these issues, rather than see them escalate. And I think that is a demanding but an achievable objective for the council. I think this is something that we can achieve. To achieve it, we would need to enlist the support and the goodwill of all members, whatever their role in the council, and all officers. So, what I hope, Mayor, is that we'll successfully involve all councillors and officers, recognising that no one of us can achieve much of anything. It's going to need teamwork and a common cause. And I think in some senses, MHCLG has done us a favour by clarifying and crystallising what these concerns are and giving us an opportunity to work together to a common cause. So I think it is an opportunity. Other local authorities have done what we hope we will do to address the concerns expressed by MHCLG and for them to be stepped down at the earliest possible moment. And I'm sure that we will do that because I can see the conviction and the level of determination on your part, Mayor, and on the part of the councillors and senior officers that I've met, that this should be so. Final thing I'd say, but I don't outstay my welcome, my very first contributions to the Cabinet. The final thing I would say is that none of the issues raised by MHCLG are new things that MHCLG have identified for themselves. They are a crystallisation of that which you already know and that which is in the public domain. I think that's a very important point, members, and indeed for the wider public in Europe to understand. This isn't a new set of issues that has been identified and presented to the council. Rather, it is a summary and I'd say a crystallisation of that which we already know. So I hope that we don't feel excessively burdened by another set of issues, because these are the things that which you yourself were aware of and which we're going to address with pace and energy and determination.
Thank you very much. Any corporate directors like to add? No? Okay, fine. I'm going to open up to any questions before we move on to that. Councillor Charlene McLean.
Brilliant, thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to know how the council is using the insights from the Transformation and Improvement Board to support delivery on the best value notice.
Okay, so to the point of the voluntary new improvement and transformation board, as I said in my introductory remarks, it's chaired by independent sector expert in local government, Mr. Rob Whiteman. There are several additional sector specific specialists that meet with the corporate leadership board on a monthly basis. Myself, in my role as the mayor, alongside Councillor Sarah Ruiz, who was the statutory deputy mayor, but I've requested that she continues attending those meetings, have been in attendance since April. And they have been very insightful in observing the positive, probing, querying and constructive feedback to enable the corporate leadership board to lean in to an additional layer of expertise. They have been invited to, for instance, support the interim corporate director of adult social care and public health, Jason Strelitz, and the team in the run-up to the recently concluded CQC inspection. And Neil, you may want to talk to some of that. They have been supporting with rigour and insight as light of their expertise on pressing around some of the financial assumptions, inviting an marking of how we're spending money across some key areas, and whether in the context of neighbouring and statistically comparable boroughs, our spend per unit, putting it crudely, is excessive or not. They've helped ahead of myself and Sarah joining the board during our budget setting process for this financial year. When Rob Whiteman, I invited him to co-chair the budget challenge sessions, and that was really helpful in driving one, more clarity around financial assumptions and modelling, particularly in the area of TA, but also providing challenge as to the focus on outcomes and impact of our residents, because let's not forget, in the context of best value, of the three main areas of focus, of which one is governance, culture, and capability. The second is financial sustainability. The third, and important to us, absolutely, and always, is improving services for residents, with a particular focus on housing service improvement plan. And no doubt Councillor Blossom Young will talk to that, and adult social care improvement. I've made some reference to that. So it's been all in round helpful on that budget engagement by Mr. Rob Whiteman, and consideration by those experts on the Voluntary Improvement and Performance Board, which was set up and established ahead of us being non-statutory best value notice. They're also charging us to reimagine how we're delivering our services, those very outcomes and impacts that we want to see in the context of building our residents' resilience, complexity of modern living, and the pressures that their household finances and themselves face. And just given the level of need that exists in this borough because of deprivation, and we'll come to deprivation when we get to the July finance report, but it's also been useful for them to challenge us in our thinking around early intervention and prevention when we're having to grapple with the consequent impacts of deprivation and poverty when it comes to high cost, high spend service areas, actually how we need to start orientating in a balanced way towards our early intervention. So it's been all round very useful. I don't know whether there are any corporate directors wish to comment on their experience and usefulness of having a board in place to be able to sense check, and then I'll invite cabinet members to talk specifically about the value that they have experienced from having that input in their discussion with their corporate directors. Is there?
Yeah, very happy to. So Jason Strellis, Corporate Director for Adults and Health. I'm be particularly like to acknowledge the support from Carol Tozer, who's the independent expert on the board on adult social care, who has spent a lot of time with us as a service, met a lot of the team, really looked at our work in great detail and depth, and given incredibly supportive but robust challenge and thoughts for us to really reflect on the service. And it's actually a huge privilege to have someone with her level of experience and expertise come and spend really real quality time with us, with the clear aim to help us improve. So it's been incredibly useful, helped us prepare for our recent CQC inspection, but also left us with a lot of things going forward. And I think I'm really looking forward to her to continuing working with the service going forward in an ongoing way.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, Corporate Director of Children and Young People Services, Laura Eden. So just to echo what Jason says, I have another Director of Children's Services, Eleanor Brazil, who's a really experienced Director of Children's Services, and will basically look at all our budget, our savings proposals, how we're delivering on them. She's attended everything from practice meetings about children to much more strategic meetings, looking at our strategies, our self-evaluations for Ofsted, for example, really provide a critical eye and some robust challenge, and again, in a supportive, relational way, but in a very robust way. So it's been really helpful for us. And then she's writes a report for the improvement board, which is then critiqued by the whole improvement board. So it's been really useful.
So Conrad Hall, Corporate Director of Resources. Perhaps just speaking more generally, I think one of the differences between the local authority sector and the parts of the public sector and indeed the private sector is the relatively limited use of non-executives. Transformation improvement board is not exactly non-executives, but it's pretty sort of analogous. you look at other parts of the public sector or the private sector, one of the strengths of their governance model is that acceptance of non-executives, people with experience from same area, or indeed different areas, to bring that kind of cultural talent to everything that you do. I think you already had a sort of fairly good record on that. For example, the audit committee has, all the time I've been here, been independently chaired with independent members of it. And so, I think drawing on this sort of expertise generally, all organisations can benefit from that external look and challenge.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Paul Kitson, Corporate Director for Inclusive Economy, Housing and Culture. I think it's in housing, it's important to note the contribution that Pamela Leonce and Diana Rowack have made, I think, on two main areas, in particular in helping shape the Housing Services Improvement Plan. As the Improvement Board were involved in developing that, seeing early versions of it and then giving it essentially their approval at the right time. Pamela also sits on our Housing Services Improvement Board, so it's bringing her registered provider experience into our improvement governance meeting every month. Dinah and others are joining us just this week, in fact, as well, to do some further analysis and work around the temporary accommodation crisis. So from a housing perspective, it's been extremely helpful to have some new expertise, some new support, and all the connections they bring into grappling with some of our biggest problems.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to open up to just some cabinet members that may want to comment on the usefulness of. Yeah, did you want to start?
Okay, so Councillor Neil Wilson, Cabinet Lead for Health and Adult Social Care. I want to echo Jason's comments about, we'd already established following the, and I said this at full council, following where we invited the London Association of Directors of Adult Social Care, the London ADAS, to undertake a peer review. We then had some obviously key areas of strength, but also areas for further development. And then we set up a practice improvement board, which I'm the vice chair of under Adi Cooper, another outside person with a lot of experience, oversee the improvement journey with a practitioner forum. And then we've then had this further level, which has been really helpful from Dr. Carol Tozer, in terms of being a representative on the board at that corporate level. And I want to echo what Jason has said. Obviously, there's been significant progress, but our independent adult social care expert did do that deep analysis into our social care practice. The focus on the CQC inspection is on practice, hence a practice improvement board, which was also very helpful in discussions with me, very open. And I think it's important that I think that was reflected at the time that she's been working with us. It is, in the main report, that there's been significant progress, but obviously we will continue to press ahead with our improvement plans. And I welcome Carol's input. It's not just for a CQC audience, though that's very important for an external national framework, but that there is a voice, I think, at the very improvement, because it was one of the best value notices to improve services for residents with particular focus on adult social care. It is not to say that, that we are worried about having external evaluation, far from it. But I think it's important in the context of this best value notice, with the emphasis on pace and clear delivery of change and impact on our residents, that we actually have the right voices represented on the very issues noted in the report. So I echo the comments of our corporate director, very helpful. And most importantly, it's not just another set of voices coming into adult social care. It's about questions raised that we can actually have greater thought and then get represented in a proper transformational way. So
Thank you.
really helpful.
Blossom.
Absolutely. And yes, really, Chair, just to echo Paul's comments, particularly around the contribution of Pamela Leonce, who, as Paul mentioned, sits on our Housing Strategic Board, which is really driving the delivery of our Housing Services Improvement Plan. So that plan was launched in May earlier this year. and really off the back of the C4 judgment that we received back in October. I think there's been a real journey since that time about analysing the root causes of what went wrong in the service and really understanding what the systematic issues were, where the delivery issues were, and that has led us to a series of key areas of focus, primarily about the kind of safety of our residents at their homes, but also really picking up on how residents experience our services, how they're involved in shaping our services, but also the ways of working within the team. And there's a lot in there about how we hold data, how we make improvements to our systems, how we improve the way that residents experience our services. It's been really important also to get a external challenge in that. So Pamela's role is incredibly important, but also that of various consultant teams who have been advising us on those issues and who continue to work with the team as we go through this improvement journey. And also really to shape and give sharper focus to the way that that plan and that work is governed. So giving specific focus to some of our key challenge areas around temporary accommodation with Councillor Verdi and with the housing improvement plan here, and strengthening that with the Housing Strategic Improvement Board. And then also around how we introduce resident voice into that mix. So we've established a resident challenge board who are interrogating particular areas of work, and they've been doing some really important work around our vulnerable tenants work, which is around trying to understand the needs of our tenants in our highest risk blocks, so that we are able to make sure there are appropriate safety plans in place. So they provided some really invaluable feedback that is feeding to that work as it rolls out further. You know, this is a very long journey that we are on and will require significant change. And I would not want to underestimate the challenge of that. But I am really pleased that we're starting to see some early results, not least in the recent tenant satisfaction measures, which are published annually. But we've seen a rise in overall satisfaction with our housing services from 9% last year to 71% this year. And if nothing else, that provides us with an early indication that the direction of travel feels is in the right way.
Thank you very much. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sarah Lewis, Cabinet Member for Children, Education and Sustainable Transport. Firstly, I'd like, it's not adding to the loving of the independent people, but actually for someone like me, it's been a real privilege to work with experts, independent experts, right across. So although I'm primarily interested in children and education and sustainable transport, I also recognise that this is a whole council endeavour. And so I have really welcomed the challenge. So I've met with Eleanor and she has really done some deep dives into areas that we may be struggling with, such as transitions. So I really welcome that and possibly, but I also welcome the challenge that the best value brings us, because I think that we should see it as an opportunity and not be totally governed by getting out of best value. We need to use it as an opportunity to look at our services as a whole. And my question may well be a little superfluous now, but I'm just interested in how the council is working together, because Paul talked about staff and members. I'm interested in how we are going to be working together across directorates, and that's all staff, to ensure the delivery of best value. So it's not just something that happens up here, it's actually got to permeate right the way down.
Okay, is that a question or a statement?
That was a question.
Okay. So I'm going to put
my voice at the end.
I'm going to put it back to you, given that you're a member of Cabinet. How do you think it needs to happen? And I appreciate this is a formal meeting of Cabinet, and we have commenced the conversations around how we need to reflect on how we have been doing things. It's the opportunity of a reset to do things better and improve.
So, yeah, I mean, so I think that, as a cabinet, it has, we have, you know, an area of focus, but not to the detriment of everything else that needs to be done. So I think as a cabinet, right from the very beginning, we accepted the challenge. We were probably disappointed, but we saw it as an opportunity, for us to have closer working. So, you know, although, we work together as a team, it does mean that actually we needed to focus on where we could jointly work together. So although housing isn't necessarily in my purview, actually it's really important for our care leavers and our families. So it is an opportunity for cross-working. I think that I would hope that it isn't just at the top level. I think that staff below need to fully understand that they are part of delivering these services. And I don't know how that is happening. I mean, staff don't stop me in the canteen and say, oh, what about this best value, Sarah? Do you know, but I would hope that that is being cascaded down, because actually, although we are the custodians here, we rely on the people lower down to deliver and put into place what we agree that we're going to do. And often that is where it's a bit of a log jam, in that we don't always communicate in the best way exactly what we expect to achieve.
Okay. Or we assume we don't.
Or we assume we don't.
Because we're not operational.
No.
And we glean from our perspective and
from our residents, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, our residents are our biggest thermometer almost. Yeah.
I'm going to invite Paul.
Well, it's a very interesting conversation, and the bit I wanted to add is that all of the contributions that we've just heard, and this is from officers, members, there's no defensiveness, there's no sense of denial, or pushback to MHCLG, but rather a wish to use this process to accelerate the pace and effectiveness of our improvement and outcomes. And this is the in a sense the answer to the question you raised, Councillor, is you know, how we're going to. We need to make it a galvanising. It's not about, you know, proving anyone is wrong or saying, well, we couldn't do any more because of this or that. And, you know, Newham's got very severe and intense deprivation, and it would be understandable even if some members said, well, our circumstances are extremely challenging and it's a very particularly complex and difficult environment in which we're working, and that's true. But rather than looking for alibis and excuses, we're saying we want to use this as an opportunity for change, improvement, greater pace and impact. And I think that certainly on the staff side, as you know, speaking as the head of the paid service, what I hope and expect I'll find amongst our workforce, amongst our colleagues, is that people want to work for a council that is committed to improvement. And council that is that is realistic about where it needs to develop and committed to its improvement. And this will be a galvanising mission. I think many councils, all councils really, we have about over 700 lines of business and specialist areas in their own particular you know area. And getting everybody together in a single mission is always a challenge for local authority, and for a large local authority like Newham, we've got this opportunity to say we've got an agenda here that's described as a leader that brings us all together, and no matter what our role or position in the organisation, we're all part of the London Borough of Newham. For all of our staff, that's what it will say on the payslip every month. And this ship as a common cause. And I think that the leadership that you've just shown in the way that cabinet members and corporate directors are responding to this will provide the leadership and solution to the challenge.
Thank you very much. Okay, did you add yet?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a few comments with regard to the best value notice and indeed financial perspective. And can I say also that we welcome the new interim chief executive brief analysis of the situation and very encouraging remarks. Thank you for that. And as colleagues have said, we fully appreciate and recognize the seriousness of these issues. We do have an action plan, and we've identified a number of areas which, as Paul said, they're no surprise. These are part of our other action plans which we've been working on. And as you heard from my colleagues, they have already provided updates from the respective area in terms of what we are already doing. But since this is a formal best value notice, it's a non-statutory, and we recognize that it's not going to be an easy journey. But as a collective team, working along with other internal and external partners, we will continue to work and deliver improvements in action plan. And we need to get out of this within 12 months. We have a refreshed medium-term financial strategy, which does bring about the realistic picture over the next 3 years, which is challenging. And we know the pressures we are facing are not unique to us. Temporary accommodation is a big issue, along with social care costs and the population increase and the inflation and the demands are rising. But we are not staying still. We've been moving pretty rapidly, and I'm pleased to say that we have good horizon scanning principles in place, keeping an eye on what is happening externally in terms of what the government is doing from fair funding review, consolidation of grants. And we will be responding to the consultation process before it closes, because we do feel that we are not being fairly rewarded in terms of the pressures we face as the borough. So there is a lot of work going on. There is a corporate oversight, and we are closely monitoring spend we're incurring. We have transformation program, you already heard. We have the independent improvement board. All these are contributing towards improvements that we're looking at. But we're not under any illusion that this is not an easy task. The scale is quite complex. And I'm sure, as I want to say this since the residents who are watching us, that we are working together and acting decisively where needed. But there are tough decisions to be taken, and we will do that. And we want to make sure that we actually get the best value notice withdrawn within the next 12 months as we intend collectively. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, we'll pick up some of those financial issues in the July finance report shortly. Are there any other contributions? Otherwise, I will. Amma, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so Councillor Amma Verdi, Statutory Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Lead for Community Safety, Homelessness, PRS and Housing Needs. Just recognising, I mentioned it last week at full council, the transparency and openness and what the best value actually means to residents and ensuring that we deliver it. I talked about how in our collective roles, whether it's politicians, as a corporate leadership board and as a council, we show that and demonstrate ultimately to residents that need to experience that level of service that's really important for them. Councillor Ali mentioned obviously the temporary accommodation crisis, obviously talks about the challenges we're facing. And I mentioned that we've got 7,000 people in temporary accommodation and counting, and 40,000 people on our house register list. Paul talked about the prevention, which is really important, being really open and transparent to residents. I mentioned last week as well how we had weaknesses and gaps as a council in terms of prevention and relief. We've gone from one of the worst councils in terms of prevention and relief to one of the best across the country. And that demonstrates how much we are trying to upstream our residents. We talked about the population growth, which poses its challenge. Net migration as well is another factor to consider in terms of the challenges we experience in temporary accommodation. Whilst there's work being done in terms of working with external and internal partners to tackle some of these challenges, it's working with our partners in the PRS as well, our landlords, recognising some of the approaches that come to us are from the private rental sector, but recognising we've got a lot of compliant landlords and working with them closely to attribute to taking on this challenge of temporary accommodation. So there's multifaceted approaches that are being taken, but recognising ultimately the humane nature of temporary accommodation, homelessness, being really honest to our residents of what we can do and what we can't do is really pertinent. And ultimately, the challenge across not just London, across the country, attributes to the house crisis that we're in across the whole of the UK.
Thank you very much.
We conclude on that remark.
Thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to suggest that we move on to the recommendations. Could you please just draw your attention to big page number 24? Cabinet is recommended to 2.1, note the best value notice issued to the London Borough of Newham on the 8th of May and the implications for all officers and members arising from it. 2.2, note the update on how the council is responding to it, building on progress made so far across the range of improvement activity that has been underway for some time. 2.3, note the steps taken with its independent chair, Rob Whiteman, to strengthen the Newham Transformation and Improvement Board to provide the council with support, challenge and assurance, as well as to provide independent assurance to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. And 2.4, note that regular updates will be provided to Cabinet Council, overviewing scrutiny and audit and governance committees on how we are working to deliver best value for our residents across the council, following quarterly meetings with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Is that noted? Are those noted? Yep, that's a formal noting by everyone.
Yep.
Thank you. Now moving on to the next meaty paper, and that's July finance review. I'll be inviting Councillor Zulfikar Ali to introduce this report, and then we'll take any commentary from Corporate Director for Finance and Resources, Conrad, alongside Andrew Ward, and then I'll add some contributions as well. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The finance review report bring together three essential updates that reflect the current state of the council's finances. And this is set against a backdrop of heightened national scrutiny, long-term structural pressures, and continued reliance on exceptional financial support. The first report is the outturn for 25. And as you will see, Chair, that there's been a slight improvement against the previous forecast. And this is marginal, in my view, as a result of reduction in the accommodation cost, temporary accommodation, despite the increase in demand. And the second report is the 25-26 budget monitoring, and that's for the first quarter. Again, there is slight improvement. We welcome improvement, but we can't be complacent because clearly this is only based on the first month. And there is considerable uncertainty around future cost pressures and the unforeseen developments, which could quickly reverse the early trend. However, we are monitoring things very, very closely to make sure that our forecasts are reviewed, updated, and all the actions we take are delivering benefits for the residents from Newham. And the third report is about the medium-term financial strategy. I mean, you can clearly see that the pressures and uncertainties are leading us in a direction that is increasing the medium-term financial risks. We are projecting 115 million shortfall by 2019. And this growing deficit highlights this financial position that we are facing. And whilst the incremental improvements are helpful, clearly we do need to make sure that we look at positively on all the stuff we're doing, looking at the government announcements we're making, and we need to change, to reflect, to ensure that this 150 million is reduced as much as we can. Have good saving plans. We're looking at the budget pressures at the moment. We're looking at savings. We're keeping an eye on the government financial settlement, fair funding review. As I said earlier, we'll be responding to government consultation, making sure that the poverty levels in the borough are recognised. Our population is truly that. You heard earlier, we have 30,000 people more in the borough than the government recognises. So these are the issues that we're working with other authorities, LGA, local London Council, to make sure that our case is heard and is reflected in terms of fair funding review. Colleagues, as you know, we balanced the budget this year through exceptional support. We agreed to dispose of assets in order to pay off the difference. We are not going to be able to see that as a sustainable solution, because once you've sold an asset, it's gone forever. We got the best value notice now, as you heard earlier. is raising a number of questions which we need to address collectively and throughout the medium-term financial strategy. So we do need to do things differently. And that's something that we are looking at very positively. And we are ensuring that we look at our financial management. The budget processes have already commenced. We're looking at the internal controls, and we're looking at all external opportunities. We need to make sure that we save money where we can. Newham is a borough with a high level of deprivation, as I said, and there are several long-standing drivers which continue to exert pressure on the council financial position. Temporary accommodation, you already heard. We suffered the most in London and indeed in the whole country. But our social care costs are increasing rapidly. Demand is going up. And the medium-term financial strategy sets out, the budget gaps in each of those areas. But we do have 80 million saving plans, which we need to deliver. And I'm pleased to say that our track record is getting better. We had 86% last year, 91% now, and we're hoping to deliver 96%. But we need to increase that to make sure that we deliver as much as we can. There are national developments, as I said earlier. We're keeping an eye on those. Once we know the local government financial settlement in late November, then we should have undertaken the consultation, and we will have a draft budget December, January. We want to make sure that we have a budget that is legal, it's balanced, but we need to find savings, we need to make tough decisions, and we need to make sure that our residents will hold pressure. This is not going to be an easy task. It's difficult, but I think collectively, as the cabinet, as the corporate leadership team, we are working together to make sure that we don't leave any stones unturned and do everything we can to reduce the cost, improve performance, and we have a zero budget-based budgeting exercises, which is currently being undertaken as part of the review process. So we need to make sure that we are demonstrating effectively that we are delivering best value through this process and ensuring that our budget is sustained in the future. It's not going to be easy, as the collective said. This is a national situation. Most are facing what we are facing, but the scale of challenge in Newham is much greater than elsewhere. So I will leave it there, Chair, and I'll invite Conrad Hall if he wishes to add a few things.
Please.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Thank you, Mayor. I'll just add a little bit on the sort of look ahead. And as Councillor Ali has highlighted, the funding review will lead to some quite significant, perhaps even radical changes in the distribution of funding for local authorities. And paragraph 3, 4 and onwards in the report. Currently out for consultation with a deadline of, I think, 15th of August, and of course the council will reply on that to be most appropriate and fair. Worth saying our current assessment of what's in there, we think is positive for Newham. Emphasise we think, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But not so on a like basis, the core grant at least will be rising by something of more than £30 million over the next 3 years, around about twice what we budgeted for in February, of course, is positive. But of course, I need to emphasise it's a consultation, it may change as a result of that consultation, and it is pretty complex. We don't have all of the details yet, so we are relying on reasonable assumptions and models provided by London councils as to what the exact impact of that will be for individual boroughs. We won't know that until November at the earliest, when the provisional finance settlement for local government is published. And there are also a number of changes to, aside from core funding, to lots of the ring-fence grants that currently exist, where it looks as though those are being changed possibly quite substantially. Again, we don't have all of the detail of that. But I said that the changes are substantial. Some London boroughs, particularly in inner London, would be on these models losing substantial sums. Perhaps the summary, or best single line summary for Newham, because of the additional weighting and calculation of deprivation, that is increasing the funding we receive, but there are also geographical shifts. So perhaps, if you like, here's what is happening is Newham will be receiving a greater slice of this smaller share for London. I do want to highlight paragraph 4.3 in particular, where we highlight the 2025 data from the Office of National Statistics, showing that substantial increase in the count of Newham's population from 350,000 in 2021 to 386,000. It will be very important for us to ensure that the most recent is used as the basis for the distribution of funding for all the obvious reasons. And of course, we will make that point strongly in our response to the consultation. But despite all of that, as I say, the assessment is cautious, positively about the impact of that on Newham so far. Is important to emphasise temporary accommodation remains the significant driving factor for all our budget pressures. Paragraph 4.21, you'll see the net cost of that has risen from something like 20 million 3 years ago to around 80 million now. And the paragraph following that, you see the projected continued rise in that, perhaps slightly less steep than we previously thought, but still very, very substantial. And so it is difficult to see, in the short term at least, a solution for the council that doesn't continue to rely on exceptional financial support done for, and through the budget process, very difficult choices about the nature, level and quality of services that can be provided within the funding envelope available. So the next budget setting round will continue to confront those difficult choices. I will pause there, Mayor, and one's online may wish to add something, Commission Mayor, or else we can take questions on the report as helpful.
Okay, Andrew, is there anything that you'd like to add at this stage?
Not at this stage, Mayor. No,
Okay, fine. Let me just open up to any questions. Are there any questions in regards to the report? I don't think, yeah, there clearly aren't no hands going up. Look, the report makes for clear and sobering reading, given the scale of the financial challenge facing Newham and indeed the entirety of the local government sector. I think it is important to acknowledge that we are going to, as we wait for further clarity on the fair funding review that's out for consultation, the consolidation of grants and the like, needing to undertake even deeper thinking around what more we can be doing to stave off pressures, hence the emphasis around early intervention prevention. It was really good to hear Councillor Amaverdi just set out some of the exceptional work being done to offset some of that pressure, but given the scale of the challenge in literal numbers coming up to over 7,000 and issues of market supply and costly hotel accommodation, etc., clearly we're also operating in an inefficient, ineffective and arguably broken market. There are going to be tough decisions. Just wanted to signal very clearly that those tough decisions and deliberations across everything that we do as a council, as we meet our legal requirements as a local authority, are no doubt lead to quite testing conversations. But we will have to continually be transparent with our residents. We need to start having those meaningful conversations with our resident community and provide explanation, because in this world of being triggered by posted on social media and X, it's easy for people to be coloured by a partiality of what's actually happening in the real world. And we will also need to work diligently with our other councillor colleagues around the range of challenging considerations that we're going to need to undertake, as well as continually driving in line with our responsibilities to the best value transformation at pace, but also being realistic as to how much transformation can generate in terms of organisational efficiency, and then adding to the bottom line. And the fact of the matter is, in spite of all of those interventions over the past several months, we're still forecasting a position of significant budget gap over the medium-term financial strategy. But I am also hopeful in the context of our contributions to a national debate relating to fair funding, the amplification and elevation of deprivation in a place like Newham, where our population has also grown since the 2021 census, remains significant, and all of that needs to be injected in our conversations across every single area of government nationally, and through our local parliamentary representatives and through the representative bodies that we are valued members of, both London councils and local government associations. But again, at times of gravity and challenge, we also need to provide courage and demonstrate sustain our own hope and hope for our residents. I don't doubt commitment of all of you in this room. The residents aren't left to fall, but they still have a council that is standing confidently in allyship and in enabling them to lead fulfilling lives. It's the reason why the interventions that we're making through our children and young people services is the thinking that's underway around transitions and integration between children and adult social care, and also the work that we're undertaking in staving off challenge of housing supply through building homes. But we will have to ask ourselves tough questions. We'll have to rethink the way in which we deliver council services, where we deliver them, how, and also ensure that we widen opportunity in this borough so that those that dominate that profile of resident that are in this borough that live financially precarious lives actually lead more stable lives. But we're going to need to help and dig in, but remain courageous, confident in this quest. Right, I'm going to pause there. Any questions, colleagues? I don't think so. I think this is just a noting report. Okay, so colleagues, can I just draw your attention to the recommendations? The reasons set out in the report and its appendices, the Mayor and Cabinet to 3.1, note the Council's updated financial situation as set out throughout the review and in report A, B and C. 3.2, agree to proceed with a public consultation by the autumn, setting out the Council's position and seeking views on which services should be prioritised to inform political decision making. 3.3, note the Council's approach and commitment to reducing the budget gap by finding more savings, including through zero-based budgeting, to be presented back to Cabinet in the autumn of 2025-26. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, colleagues. We're now moving on to agenda item 7. I'll also be inviting Councillor Rita Chadder to talk to this Cabinet report. You'll note from the introduction that we've set out in this transformation and improvement performance report that is a closing report for the 2024-25 year. And as everyone is aware, we produce these quarterly reports for the current live year. This report enables us to glean from the raft of data and information at our hands, a comprehensive picture of how the council's delivering on its fear and new emissions. Obviously, the relevancy of the best value notice will add a really important dimension to future quarterly reports for this financial year, but it provides a instrument through where we're able to see progress and yes, celebrate those, but also importantly in our ongoing quest around continuous improvement, where we need to redouble efforts and do more. I wanted to just also draw attention to the new formatting. I trust that this will make it for ease of reading from previous reports. And I also just draw your attention in the introductory section on some of the areas that we need to undertake the work. You've already heard in this cabinet meeting so far, Councillor Blossom's commentary around the improvement journey housing services is on following the regulator of social housing's findings of serious failures leading to the C4 grading, and also levels of knife crime remain deeply concerning in light of our intention for Newham to be the best place for children and young people to grow up. And this is symptomatic of a challenge facing all local authorities in the capital and elsewhere. I'm going to pause there and invite Councillor Rita Chadder to talk to the Transforming Newham for the Future programme, because this plays an important role.
Thank you, Mayor. So to sum up, in terms of the piece of work on transformation, obviously this is the first time there's been an integrated report bringing together performance and transformation together, and obviously the synergies speak for themselves. We don't know where we need to go if we don't know how well we're doing at the moment, and that hopefully the new format, as the Mayor said, makes this a lot clearer and a lot more focused for everybody to engage with. You'll note that across the performance report, there is also very clear explanations of where things are in the red and why they're in the red. And that's something that we hope to be able to galvanise into the transformation plan as well. It's also worth noting that in terms of the performance report, there is currently a government consultation out on an outcomes framework for local authorities. And it is our intention to kind of weave that going forward into this. I don't expect there to be much difference, because from the original look at from an initial look at the consultation, it covers all the bases that we're doing. However, we may also want to dive a little bit deeper into localised indicators that we believe are important as well. And I know some colleagues from Cabinet are particularly keen on that. You'll also note from the performance report that, from the KPI position on Appendix 2, that there are the housing safety indicators are now also included in this. They're marked as new indicators, 6014, 6017, 6018 and 620 on page 16. This again demonstrates, as colleagues have said earlier, to that holistic approach of working across the council as well. On the issue of transformation itself, you've got there the June update. It's a streamlined plan from what was originally presented to Cabinet in August 2024, some very clear focus. What I would outline as well is that, quite rightly, lots of people are concerned about the focus on online services. They are very clear that actually digital exclusion, digital capability still has to be a responsibility for this council. And there is a further slide which will remain consistent through all presentations on how we manage and how we monitor digital exclusion. Transformation and the use of AI and technology has great powers to improve services, but we genuinely want to make sure that that is accessible. So any savings there can then actually be reinvested. Where we are at the moment is we are on target to complete 48 digital journeys by the end of by the end of July, early August, and that will provide the basis for us going forward. We won't see the outcomes and the savings that those offer, both in efficiency, both in staff morale, and also in resident experience, most importantly, until about September. And obviously, we'll make sure that that's a focus for the next report of actually, is this working? And I'll end there, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any questions, colleagues? No? All right, fine. So let's move on to recommendations. If you could kindly note the recommendations set out on big page number 246. For the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, the Mayor and Cabinet are recommended to 2.1, note the progress made during 2024-25 in delivering the Building a Fairer Newham delivery plan and the Transforming Newham for the Future plan, as outlined in this appendices. Agree the new Building a Fairer Newham key performance data targets for 25-26 as set out in Appendix 2. Are those noted and agreed?
Noted.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That's noted and agreed by everyone. On now to agenda item 8. This is the new growth plan 2025 to 2030. So colleagues, it is in summary an update and refresh consolidated strategic framework that gives colour vision and an articulate the economic social development ambition of this administration for Newham case. It is very much underpinned by our inclusive growth and community wealth building intent. It's identified priority areas, promoting green industries and community wealth building, delivering quality homes and neighbourhoods and creating a fairer local economy. It's very much sticking with the regional Mayor of London London growth plan that was published in March. It very much talks to our important role as a sub-regional player and partner through local London, and there's another report coming to Cabinet this morning in regards to that, around how, in context of a new national government 10-year mission-based ambition for this country to rebuild, fix, to ensure the context of UK PLC and our nation, we can compete globally. That will require a real diligence in our crafting, stitching together all of the routes and pathways to skills acquisition, given the significant great educational outcomes that our young people achieve, but also accounting for those young people who, for a whole host of reasons, aren't enabled and empowered to achieve their potential and be their best, which we also sure we address, because for all of our young people and our residents indeed to live fulfilling, healthy and prosperous lives. We all know that we live in challenging times. The cost of living, inflationary pressures have impact on household finances and the like. But for us as a council, as administration, as a police in this locality, the deal with the day-to-day challenges, we're never neglecting and blind to the opportunity that the future holds. We've got to be adaptable as a borough. We've got to be mindful of the seismic changes happening in the global economy and how that manifests nationally and regionally. in the context of the future world of work and growth sectors of our economy. And we have been doing that over the past 7 years. We've accelerated a lot of our work in one particular area, in the area of the data economy. In the borough, become pretty much preeminent in London, given the scale of opportunity that we're providing to over 2,000 of our residents in the past 12 months alone, accessing training, opportunity, skills acquisition in all things data, AI and the like. This is a really important point for us in terms of this new growth plan, because it is an articulation of our ongoing and enduring commitment to address those structural people back, those structural impediments, including structural racism, inequality, deny people the life chances that they deserve. And as demonstrated in the previous cabinet report, we are having impact. There's a tangible proof underpinning what we do in that report, and this will help, this report, the New and Growth Plan, will help us advance further. It will require much more integrated, coherent and cohesive working across just an inclusive growth, housing delivery and culture, directorate mission. This is a whole council mission. And it will provide us with evidence as it relates to our fundamental duty, which is to help improve and transform lives and the lives of our people and the communities which they reside in. So I commend this report. I'll invite Kitson if he would like to contribute any additional words, or Darren Mackin, who.
Can I just say thank you for that introduction? So I won't say anything by way of introduction, just to acknowledge the work that Megan Charnley put into this. She's just gone on maternity leave, actually. She's worked tirelessly on it for a number of months, and I know many of you and others across the council. So just want to thank that, and then invite Darren to come in if he'd like to just say a few more words and then questions.
Thank you very much.
I can do if that's helpful. It's Darren Mackin, Director of Community Wealth Building. So I guess I just wanted to draw Cabinet's attention to 1 or 2 points around the structure of the report. We've kind of deliberately focused it in 2 directions. One of the directions is on what's called the foundational economy, and that's building on a lot of the work the Newham services, for example, have already done around helping people access work, but also helping to improve experience for people in work through things like the Employment Rights Hub, and also helping people to upskill. We recognise in the strategy that it's still a big part of Newham's economy, and many of our residents work in that sector, so it's important to retain that focus. But the plan also kind of draws into sharper definition the growth sectors. So the Mayor has mentioned the data and digital sector, which obviously we've made some fairly significant progress on already. There was also a renewed focus on green construction skills, clearly important for both tackling our climate emergency priorities, but also building new homes. And the final sector is the creative and culture sector. Clearly, there's a transformational opportunity in the borough's the arrival of the East Bank, but also building on a lot of the work that's gone on by grassroots organisations in the borough over recent years. So the plan is looking, I guess, in both directions and helping to set those priorities over the next 5 years.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess just to pick up on that, looking into directions point, and look, I really welcome the plan. I think it is important that we recognise the real breadth of economic and indeed socioeconomic opportunity and activity happening across the borough. I guess we see in other places and in too many places areas where opportunity sits and where foundational economy sits. And what we don't necessarily see is the pathways that bring that together to deliver really genuinely inclusive growth. And I wondered if you could expand a bit more on that and how this does that differently.
Thank you very much. Darren, did you want to start?
Yeah, of course. So thank you for that question. I think you're right. I think one of the benefits for me in setting it out in this way is having that focus on those three sectors, because we'll be able to work more deliberately with employers, with skills and training providers, to create those pathways, because we'll have a sort of more granular focus, I think, on how they develop. The big thing is really ensuring that where the physical opportunities are being developed, particularly around areas like Stratford and the Royal Docks, that the right kind of backup programs are put in place around that, and the investment goes in the right direction. And also as well, there's a big part in this plan around helping people see that the aspiration and that the opportunities that are being created are for them as well. So hopefully this plan brings that all into sharper focus.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor John Whitworth.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Whitworth, Cabinet Member for Air Quality and Climate Emergency. I think this report shows the very core purpose of the council. That is growth for a purpose. The purpose is, of course, to benefit all of the council's residents, and in a borough where there's a lot of deprivation, this is key to bringing up the standard of living and well-being of the least fortunate. I mean, the report does underline key bases like providing more genuinely affordable housing, improving basic services and residents' access to them, and just basically food and energy security, which many people are struggling with. One of the keys, though, of course, for growth is education and employment. And the report does specify the needs for and opportunities with local firms and anchor institutions for training, education, and, if possible, apprenticeships. But how do we ensure that the people who find it most difficult to access training and employment, how do we ensure that they're not left behind and they're provided for?
Okay, Darren?
Yeah, so there's actually a report following this on the agenda, Councillor Whitworth, that speaks to some of that agenda. And there's quite a lot of investment at the moment going into supporting people who are economically inactive or furthest away from the labour market. And what so that money is allocated to us through Local London, and then we have targets set within that to deliver on numbers. But what we'll be doing through this new plan is orientating our activity around where we know there are opportunities in Newham, be that in the foundational economy or in these growth sectors. So there is actually investment going in to support that element of delivery.
Any other questions, colleagues? No. I'm going to suggest that we move on. And just to say, actually, to the point on Megan, she is on maternity leave, and you'll be pleased that she's given birth. And it's a gorgeous little person. Anyway, so we will pass on our congratulations, but also can we formally note our collective thanks to Megan for all of our hard work. Okay, so let's move to the recommendations. It's on big page number 370. For the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet is recommended to agree to approve the Newham Growth Plan 2025-2030 as set out in Appendix 1. Is that approved?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. That's agreed by everyone. Colleagues, we're now moving on to agenda item 9. So this is the acceptance of grant funding for the Connect to Work programme. It links to some of the things that have been said at the previous report on the growth plan. I'll be inviting again colleague Paul Kitson, but also Burhan Uddin, who has authored this report. So I mentioned that we are part of the sub-regional partnership in London called Local London, and this report, in summary, is asking us to agree that we will accept a grant of just under £1 million to deliver the Connect to Work programme over the next 2 years. And the Connect to Work programme is linked to the new well, 1-year-old governments get Britain's working intention of those that are long-term unemployed. So the report sets out the will be providing a raft of support as part of our coherently designed process and based on our expertise of getting people back into work. And there'll be, through this programme, ongoing learning so that we can finesse and refine. And I think given the vulnerabilities that exist in this cohort of residents experiencing challenges in entering into the employment stroke labour market, it will undoubtedly be done with the sensitivity required. I often reflect on some residents that I meet that have form or another, be it partially sighted or blind or aren't able to hear, and the challenges and struggles that they have to face and find challenging overcoming because of the inability to access the labour market. And we've got to do all that we can to break down barriers. And I think this is going to be a really important endeavour here locally, just given the number of individuals that could be positively impacted by this. So I'm going to pause there. I don't know if there are any words by Paul, or is it Darren? Is Burhan here, or did you want to talk?
It's just me.
Okay, over to you, Darren.
Yeah, I suppose you made all the main points. I would just say that the grant allocation is for a 5-year period, between June 2025 and March 2030, and it's up to £5.5 million. And that's obviously a significant investment. As the Mayor said, the RNUM service has got quite a well-established track record of helping people into work, and increasingly actually has been focused on this cohort. So we feel we're in a fairly strong position to be able to deliver on the requirements of this agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions, colleagues? Councillor Sarah Roos.
Thank you, Chair. And I really welcome this report. I think that we need to recognise the amount of work that our Newham work has done with our care leavers and our virtual school, who are actually a long-term, not in education or employment. And they really have, I think, made a real difference to those two cohorts of people. So we need to recognise that. But my concern is in 3.8, and maybe a concern is harsh, but how are we going to ensure that we target adults and young people with a learning disability or a mental health need, or that actually we don't set them up to let them down because there are not the employers to facilitate their employment? Because we're very good at the training bit or encouraging people. The reality is that unless we have got a support program in place for employers, then this set of people are almost being set up to fail. And I don't expect the answer now, but I would be really interested in whether or not we're going to have an innovative approach to this area, because I think it's really important.
Darren, did you want to answer that?
I can do. Thank you, Councillor Roos. Yeah, I agree. Actually, it's one of the areas that's less well funded actually in this system is the support to the employers rather than to the employees. So we've got employers we work with and have, embedded relationships with, and with some examples of where that's working well. But certainly we're looking at how we could potentially fund either it's, through this funding or other funding sources, more like mentorship approach, advice to employers once people are in work and things like that. So it's definitely on our radar about that long-term sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, cool. Any other questions, colleagues? Nope. Right, okay, moving on to the recommendations that are on big page number 414, for the reasons set out in the report, services cabinet is recommended to agree 2.1, accept the allocation of Connect to Work grant funding of up to 5.5 million. We're awaiting final confirmation between June 2025 and 31st of March 2030, and enter into the agreement with the local London as a sub-regional lead. Can I just clarify, Darren?
Yeah.
Are we still waiting clarification of how much it is? Final confirmation? I thought we'd got it.
We got that within the last week.
Right, so can we just correct that then? So what's the exact figure? Is it 1 point?
I'll have to dig out the emails.
I've got just under 1 million.
Thought it said 5 point something over.
It's 5.5.
That's per year.
50.
It's
5.5 million over 5 years.
Can we, by the end of the meeting, to enable Darren to dig out the emails?
okay, is that
Possible?
actually
No, because we can't.
we can't make a decision?
Yeah.
Okay.
If the information is, can I just suggest that can I come back to the agreeing the recommendations in a moment? Let's go on to another report, yeah, whilst you've got.
Come back to this one.
But can I just have this specific correct figure, quantum figure for the 5-year period in question, given that you've got the information?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, colleagues, we're going to just pause on that. Then we're going to be moving on to the agenda item 10, Bloom Living Stratford and Forest Gate assets. Over to, this is councillor Neil Wilson and councillor Amma Verdi. So over to you, Amma.
Thank you, Chair. Just to start, I know there is on the report title, it states Stratford and Forest Gate assets, and on the website, just to formally amend that when appropriate. Because there's different things. And then just to formally introduce, I mentioned just earlier on when we started around the best value, around how as a council, working good practice across different service areas and looking at every avenue possible to tackle the temporary accommodation crisis is one of the key things we want to do. Working closely with Councillor Neil Wilson and Councillor Sarah Louise, this is one of the key parts of that work that looks at how we look at single people in need and vulnerable people. That is one of the pressing needs as a council that we're trying to address. This report looks at some of our existing council assets under the New Living programme and our approach to alleviate the growing pressures in temporary accommodation and pathway for single adults. This proposal is in line with the corporate plan and building the Fair New and Pillar 5 of homes for our residents and supporting those in temporary accommodation. The proposed refurbishments provide an alternative solution to temporary accommodation by offering high quality, fit for purpose accommodation with on-site support to help address vulnerabilities that may have contributed to the homelessness status and build the necessary independent living skills required to move on into the general needs and sustain tenancies and provide or delay the need for statutory support from housing or adult social care. And I'll pass on to Councillor Neil Wilson, who provide further information as well.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Neil Wilson, Cabinet Member for Adults and Health. I mean, supported accommodation is providing a safe and secure home for vulnerable residents. That's our definition, but it's often tailored.
In the building.
Sorry, Darren. Darren, you need to be on mute. Thank you. Sorry.
Shall I start again?
Yeah, please.
So, supported accommodation provides a safe and secure home for vulnerable residents, and we're insisting further and further along the line of offering tailored support to meet individual needs. We can't have a personalisation agenda. We can't have a really specific targeted approach if we don't tailor to the individual needs when a crucial housing need is faced. So whenever possible, the goal is to help residents regain independence, far from the dependency culture which so often adult social care has been traditionally associated with. That sort of stereotypical view is long past, but this is wherever possible, the goal is to help residents gain independence. So while the council owns limited supported accommodation within the borough, we are committed to addressing the challenge through New Living, this model, And this proposal further expands the council asset portfolio to provide specialist supported accommodation from fit for purpose buildings that can best support the needs of residents currently placed in their temporary accommodation sector. We have to remind colleagues, I think in different audiences, that a third of the temporary accommodation is single homeless, and a lot of them have very, very often overlying vulnerabilities. The properties in question are listed as A and B there, and once refurbished, it will be part of a living programme where it's single vulnerable residents. The transformation of rough sleeping has highlighted the value of investing in support alongside accommodation, enabling large numbers of rough sleepers back into independence. These proposals based on that approach, single vulnerable homeless. There's been a real pathway journey from a needs assessment right through to a successful rough sleeping pathway for single vulnerable residents. And by providing specialist high quality support to single vulnerable residents, we can provide those residents regain that crucial point of greater independence, delay or prevent complexity increasing over time, reduce the overall cost of the council through mitigating the use of temporary accommodation. And these schemes would also allow the council to specialise on specific needs, ensuring a high quality offer for vulnerable residents. I want to highlight, Chair, that the issue under both of these is relatively limited, but we are looking forward to developing this programme so that we use our properties that are in our portfolio that can be suitably adapted in due course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Are there any officers that would like to?
Simon Reid.
Simon, do you want to add anything?
Just only quickly, really. Paul Martin started the meeting talking about kind of prevention and early help being better than crisis. I think this is a really good example of us coming together as a council, assessing our options and putting forward services that will really meet the needs of residents, whilst also helping us financially. And just to highlight, we've developed 109 Newham living units over the last few years. And the thing that really stands out is the outcomes for residents within that time. And I'd also just point out that we've supported 1,400 rough sleepers over the last 4 years since COVID. We only have 60 units of accommodation. The success is supporting them to meet their needs and then get them back to independence. And again, that's a key part of this approach.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions, colleagues? I've got a question.
Questions sort of, but I think it's important for anybody who's watching this that both of these properties, they are council properties, but we're taking them over because they are not actually fit for the purpose for which they're being used. So property A, which is found to be, I mean, we have housed people there, but actually it's not really fit for habitation. And the hotel also. So it's not as if we're depriving someone else from living there. These buildings are not up to standard, and by us working together to provide, to do some refurbishment, it means that not only are those buildings being put back into use, but they're going to be less of an eyesore in the location in which they are.
Okay. Right, just yes. Councillor Miraj.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Miraj Patel, Deputy Cabinet for Environment. Can I first and foremost commend my colleagues for the cross-border workings on this and commend the report as well. My question was around the assurances that we have in terms of residents getting involved in the design and the delivery of the scheme as a whole, along with the capital investment and associated support.
I think very good question. Thanks for that. I mean, there is obviously a whole programme, as I think the officer alluded to, Simon Reid, in terms of our learning from both a needs assessment, but we've done elsewhere, as you're aware, looking at both a needs assessment, but also co-design and co-production in terms of what is the most, because groups are sometimes not so much difficult to engage with, but we don't hear their voices. So, you know, it's about hearing the voices, but making certain that these are transformative for their lives actually in a design process. So relatively small numbers, but that's because the stock is not necessarily available, but to make certain that they actually have a design brief from the start. Obviously, people don't come with technical experience, but they do have lived experience of what is appropriate for them to be truly independent. So it's not to replace the technical, but it is about making certain our services are truly delivering what our residents want. And yes, people have, you know, sometimes chaotic lives, and that's even more important that they're listened to. They sometimes had chaotic lives. And the delivery of the scheme as a whole, Councillor Wu has made a helpful intervention that sometimes people have a NIMBYism around where people are located. These are our residents. They are residents who currently would be, you know, single, vulnerable, homeless. And it is important that we treat them with the due dignity and the consideration with any other group. Most importantly, I think that the scheme as a whole is, you know, this is one supported, the New Living Programme is not just alleviating the growing pressures on TA, but is a real test bed of how we're developing not only savings and investment, but capital investment and supported accommodation, associated support, so that we don't have increasing problems for the same residents further on in the adult social care domains. So there is obviously specific needs, high quality offer, vulnerable residents, but it is about how do we make certain that is delivered. And I'm coming back just and then bring in Simon.
Yeah, I'm just going to add, what you see is it's not a whole array of properties that are available, but specific for those needs that are really important for those that are obviously vulnerable. You know, 4.5 talks about the proposed design and single vulnerable adults and its use. That's what's really important to highlight. I think that's really pertinent in terms of what we're trying to do here. And obviously, I'm just trying to touch on at the start about that opportunity in terms of demonstrating this to residents that actually utmost need it. So through the chair, if someone wants to be in other parts around the technical.
Okay. Is
I can just say quickly, the capital side will include residents. And the support side of the service will include residents. In fact, we've already started to engage with residents with lived experience in all of this work.
Yep.
Okay. Fine. Right. Are there any final questions? No. Okay, fine. So colleagues, can we just go to the recommendation set out on big page number 427? For the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet has recommended to 2.2 agree to the allocation of up to £2,054,000 from the Council's HRA capital programme for the refurbishment of property A. 2.3 agree to the allocation of up to £1,140,000 from the Council's HRA capital programme for the refurbishment of property B. 2.4, agree to commence procurement to secure a contract to deliver capital works at both properties. 2.5, to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Inclusive Economy and Housing in consultation with the lead member Housing Services to award contracts for capital works with respect. It's to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Inclusive Economy and Housing in consultation with the lead member Housing Services. Approval of variances to funding figures of up to 10%. Any variations above 10% overall will be brought back to Cabinet ahead of any contract award. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, and then moving on to nearly there. Okay, so it's the grant funding award for homes.
The
Supplementary paper, yeah. So we've got grant funding award from Warm Homes Social Housing, and I'm going to hand over to Councillor Blossom Young and Councillor John Whitworth, and then we've got officers. Right, hi there, Andy. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The council's committed receiving energy performance certificate C across our entire council housing stock by 2030, and net zero operational carbon from housing by 2045. And this is in line with the borough's transition plan and climate emergency declaration. At the same time, mandatory compliance with our law, which of course October this year, and the 2023 Social Housing Regulation Act will place an immediate duty on us to eradicate damp and mould and to safeguard residents' health. Well, delivering these outcomes at pace demands significant investment beyond the capacity of the housing revenue account. The government's Warm Home Social Housing Fund, secured through the London Strategic Partnership, which is run by London councils and led by the London Borough of Camden, provides an invaluable £1.52 million grant towards a £3.3 million programme. This programme will retrofit 359 of our worst performing homes in North Woolwich, which is the mayor-approved net zero neighbourhood demonstrator, and also in East Ham and Canning Town. Many of these homes have been identified and indeed chosen as high priority damp and mould properties. Accepting this award and entering the partnership ensures that the council capitalises on every pound of external funding. It accelerates delivery towards our climate and housing statutory targets and puts residents' health, comfort and energy bills first. It will also create local green jobs and supply chain opportunities through our community wealth building approach.
That it? Okay. Want to add anything?
I will, just three very quick points, I think. So this is a really important programme in terms of both our retrofit opportunity, but also our opportunity to address decency in our homes. And that's a really key aspiration and really key strand of work in our improvement plan. And I think this is really important for a couple of reasons. It's a really good example of where levering grant funding in and then matching that with our own resource means that we can deliver much more impactful value for money than we would be able to if we were reliant on our resources. I think there's something important about the wider partnership and about our alignment with other local authorities interested in interventions which will work and really deliver for residents in a way that addresses climate emergency, but also is about delivering decent homes. And really fundamentally, this is about residents having access to really decent homes. And this is addressing some of the homes that have been identified as requiring particular intervention. Yes, it's about delivering against the climate emergency. Yes, it's about delivering our Just Transition programme. And really importantly, it is that Just Transition. This is about resulting in lower energy bills for residents, for example, being able to live in homes which are free of damp and mould. So I would really encourage colleagues to approve this report.
Okay, super. Questions? Okay, Councillor Sears.
Thank you. And yes, I welcome this report too. I'd just like to know a couple of things. How does this programme fit in with our already damp and mould programme? Because you've been doing that for the last, well, at least 18 months. Two, I think it would be really useful at some point when we start this work for at least ward members to be notified of the properties that we are actually working on. And three is a technical, suppose, wards affected. There is no such ward as Canning Town. It's Canning Town South or Canning Town North.
And East Ham.
And East Ham is also the same. And I just think it would be really useful if that was identified, because else people will think, well, where is it? Thank you.
Okay, fine. Andy, sorry, come in.
Thank you. Andrew Kemp, Senior Climate Action Programme Manager. I think the first thing just to note is that the provisional selection of houses, not the ones that will definitely be chosen. There are various sort of retrofit assessments that need to be done to assess the technical limits and substantial amounts of engagement that will also be part of this process. But highlight which ones are included. With regards to the initial kind of list of properties have been selected, it was a combination of looking at first of all the unit, look at was the block, because most of these works will have to be done to every unit within block rather than a more sort of scattered approach. So it's then looking at where are the blocks in the borough where we can have the most impact with these sort of interventions. That's looking at various vulnerabilities, whether it's health, financial, as Young said, this programme is fundamentally about improving the homes of residents and how they are able to control that environment, to heat it in an affordable way. And so those socio-economic selection process, but there is of course a need to understand where is the best home for money whilst doing that. That will come from those.
Okay, I've got councillor Chadha.
Can I just come back on something, because I'm a little bit confused now. If it's around blocks, in Canning Town North, there could be one estate that takes up the 320 mile allocation. How will we equate for that? Our commitment to the grant fund about capturing those 4 boroughs, 4 wards of sick.
I guess the key point is that the deliverables that we have to do aren't specifically linked to those locations at this point. It's more about what we're delivering in terms of the savings generated for residents.
Why those weren't specified in the report?
Because these were the initial ones that we applied with, saying that these are the ones that we think we'll be able to go forward with. But until we've done those technical assessments, they won't be widely done. We do expect that those will be the ones that we look at. And we will include a margin for error in those retrofit assessments, so that any ones that aren't deliverable within the compliance of that grant scheme can be swapped out for other ones. All of this is an ongoing process that will be done with technical specialists.
Okay, I'm gonna pick up that question. I'll come back to that point.
It's part of that question actually, because we're being asked to approve a report that actually states wards in which we're going to be doing this work. And if you're saying that you're not quite sure, then if anybody's picked up this report, there are people who read council reports who aren't in this room, they'll be saying to us, well, hang on a minute, you've agreed this report for Victoria, Albert, Canning Town, and they'll be saying to us, well, what are you doing then? So I think that you have to be more specific. Maybe I've misunderstood, but it's not a case of this or that. It's actually, we're being asked to agree these areas.
Sorry, I should.
Not in the recommendation.
These have been selected because of their suitability based on the factors that I've previously stated. But in terms of the 3-year programme, there are still assessments that need to confirm that. Were we to have to amend it, there is room to do that within the stipulations of the grant funding. That isn't something that we expect at this point. But there is that flexibility so that we can ensure deliverability across.
Okay, so just on that point, so a couple of things, colleagues, okay, because I appreciate the questions being raised and they're important and relevant governance questions. One, on the flexibility as it relates to the grant, that will mean that there would be an updated report coming to cabinet, but is there specificity of words that says that in the report? Number one. Number two, in regards to the areas that have been determined, this has been based on, from what I understand, but again, need you, John Andy to qualify, perhaps Paul, you know, there has been quite an extensive amount of work that's been undertaken looking at the stock condition of our homes as it relates to our just transition action plan, and in the context of having identified this grant, us examining our understanding of our council stock, where it meets the criteria, looking at the scale of the stock in these areas specifically, because the data has shown that that's where the propensity of the stock is for this particular intervention to have greater benefit. But as per what Andy has said, because there's more detailed assessments that need to be undertaken with regards to that stock, it may be a case that actually one of those properties don't qualify for the use of this intervention, but they will then move on to other areas of the borough. That's what I understand is happening. Paul.
If I can just come in for a minute. So that's pretty much it. So preliminary assessment, the council's housing stock and its relative suitability for this initiative has been undertaken, and therefore those areas in the paper have been identified as the focus for a particular set of initiatives. Further assessments will be done, and largely we would expect those properties in those areas to be the only ones receiving the benefit. I think the important link to make, obviously, is these are not the only capital works that we're doing around decency, insulation and other things around our council property. And the thing to note is that the linkage between this particular funding initiative and our housing services improvement plan is solid. And part of the housing services improvement plan, obviously, is we're undertaking every week more and more stock conditions surveys of our properties, and therefore understanding a greater and greater understanding of the conditions of our properties by typology and specific properties. And our asset register is also enabling us to track repairs and maintenance so that we can understand where to put our investment. So we see this, I suppose, as a brilliant support, actually, in some work we want to do anyway. We've identified preliminary area we want to do, because we think we'll get the maximum benefit from that. Absolutely going to tie it into our ongoing repairs and maintenance, planned maintenance, since we're spending tens of millions of pounds. And we expect to spend this particular investment in those areas identified in the paper. But the key point I want to get across is the linkage between this initiative and all of the other asset improvements we've got going on every day of the week.
Okay. Just in the context of the two questions, just wanted to make sure, is that satisfactory in the context of your questions? Does that provide more clarity? Or do we need, and could you just provide an assurance in terms of what we've both said and the explanation provided by Andy? Is that sufficiently clear in the report?
I think it's sufficiently clear in the report because we've identified those areas for the preliminary work. If you're asking a question of, would you like assurance that all of the work will happen in those wards, then we'd have to confirm that once we've done the further assessments at a later point. We'd want to report back anyway through HSIB and through informal cabinet as well, progress on this initiative. No.
I think, notwithstanding that, I'm picking up is from a governance perspective, ensuring that, notwithstanding the preliminary position of this paper, once there is clarity and a finality of where it will go, there's an assurance requirement that we present an update to this.
We could certainly provide an update.
This forum.
Absolutely right, to track that.
Okay. I'm gonna just, can I just, I just need to have some conversations because I just want to get to the bottom of this. I'm really sorry, but can we just adjourn for 5 minutes?
Okay. Oh, right, sorry. Sorry, I was busy looking at a complaint.
Oh, yes, sorry, just a bit of silence, can you have an adjourn?
I'm gonna adjourn. Thank you. we just adjourned for a short while, just to clarify a few points. Ahead of us going back live, just to advise everyone that I'll be inviting Comrade Hall to provide cabinet members and other colleagues an update in terms of some minor changes that would, so that there's some specificity and clarity. Okay, so we live. Thank you very much. So colleagues, welcome back following the short adjournment, which related to Cabinet Report, Agenda Item 11, Grant Funding Award from Warm Homes Social Housing Fund, 2025 to 2028. There were just a couple of things that we needed some clarity on. And in light of the discussion we've just had, we're going to be making some minor amendments to the report for the purposes of providing more clarity. And I am going to be bringing in Corporate Director of Resources, Comrade Hall, to explain what those are.
Thank you, Mayor. So we suggest making the following changes to the report. So on the first page, under the wards affected, we will simply replace that with at 1.2 in the executive summary, and this helps to explain the earlier point, currently reads 359 council freehold homes in North Woolwich, etc. We'll amend that to add the words for freehold homes, insert the words expected to be in or predominantly in North Woolwich, East Ham, Canning Town, and so on. And in recommendations 2.3 and 2.5, where the delegation is in consultation, drafted with the council housing improvements, we'll add to those two delegations so they read in consultation with the cabinet members, council housing improvements and emergency and air quality, and that applies both to 2.3 and 2.5. And those are the amendments I would propose making to.
Okay, fine. So colleagues, everyone clear?
Yeah.
All right, super. So in light of that, can we note formally the amendments that have been made to the the agenda item 11 report, and those will be captured accurately in the decision report, which will be presented in September. And on to the recommendations as amended. Could we please note the recommendations 2.1 to 2.5 with the amendments across 2.3 and 2.5, including the cabinet member for air quality and climate action, climate emergency even. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, fine. And then we have agenda item 12, and remember we're going to go back to the Connect to Work programme report. Item 9 shortly. Independent Living Support Service contract award. Neil and Sarah.
Yes, thank you very much. So the current adults and health framework agreement for home care has been very successful in the sense that there's two main successes there, that the council is very good at keeping its residents at home, and that is at an 11% better than the England average, 15% better than its nearest statistical neighbours, people with similar demographic characteristics to this very diverse borough. And it is spending £4.9 million less per annum than the median average for its nearest statistical neighbours, and is ranked as 1/16th for value for money for our younger adult users, and 3 out of 16 for older adults. Those are the figures from the OGC Futures report, which we constantly benchmark our performance against. We're 21 out of 23 of the suppliers appointed for the CQC agreement, 21 out of 23 of the suppliers appointed under our agreement are CQC rated good. And 12 of the 23 suppliers, so just over half, are based in Newham. And that is an important consideration. 75% of our care workers are Newham residents, the majority of women of ethnic minority heritage. And it really is a good example. I'll bring in my colleague, Councillor Ruiz, in terms of another example of one council approach. But 98% of our residents have been supported via this agreement for adults so far, again, enabling control over their spend and service quality. We were rightly interrogated, the pair of us, I think, in this year's scrutiny process, but also last year, very helpfully, about what does independence mean, what is levels of tenant satisfaction and service quality. 80% of the residents in the current model are satisfied with their care and support. The trusted assessor model has enabled a prescription of non-complex community equipment, stressing the non-complex, that is dealt with under different aspects of the Care Act and often means more specialist interventions. But the non-complex community equipment with the trusted assessor gives our residents swift access to what they need and negating the need for an occupational therapy referral. Another thing is not to negate the skills of occupational therapy referrals, to make certain that they are actually being the intervention is at the right level of demand for the occupational therapist intervention. So it supported a number of residents to safely reduce the amount of care and support they need. We only do things when things are safe and where the resident feels safe. It's not taking away from, in the sense of adding to vulnerabilities, to make certain they have the right level of care and support. So the proposals in this paper aim to enhance upon those success to make subtle changes to the model. The proposal to operate a dedicated reablement, remember, is where we literally make certain people are again able to do as much as possible in their lives, so that there is not this sort of really awful, often for them and their carers and their family network, where they are going back into more interventionist measures in the health service or other social care. So we've got an all age lots model in front of us today, colleagues, where we're working to have an all age approach to disability and to enable independence. The all age lot will enable residents to have a consistent service from child to adulthood. And I think that's important. We've been rightly inspected, both Councillor Ruiz and I, about transitions. We're working very much closer together, and it's about how the Adults and Health Directorate is to able to achieve a more consistent strength-based approach and embed, I'm getting my words muddled, embed that model from what we've already learned, which has already saved the council some money, but more importantly, being more targeted to embed that trusted assessor model for the under 18 care packages. So can I segue across to Councillor Ruiz, Chair, at this point?
Of course. I hardly know what to add, Chair. Only to say that we did take this as an executive in June. We gave permission to procure a new multi-lot all-age independent living support service. And so this is the follow-up to that. I think it was interesting when we did go to scrutiny that the assumption always made is that care provision is only to older people, and that we tend to forget that many of our young people live at home and or independently with the support of this package. We had 91 people apply for these bids, for these lots. That shows it's quite a buoyant market. So thank you to Lydia and Simon, because this actually has been a huge piece of work. And I commend the report to members.
Okay. Any questions, colleagues? Councillor Blossom. Oh, sorry. Councillor Jason Strellitt.
Not councillor.
Oh.
Director.
I just want to clarify one thing. So when Councillor Wilson was introducing the paper, he referred correctly to the existing model for home care. And in the new model, all of the providers will be CQC good. So that'll be a feature. I just didn't want any confusion about what was previously the situation to this situation where going forward under this procurement, all of the providers will be CQC good or outstanding.
Great. Yep. Okay, any questions? I've got Councillor Blossom Young.
I think that really links to my question. So it's really good to hear that all of the providers on the framework will be good. I think my question really is about kind of ongoing quality and how we ensure that throughout the lifetime of this.
Sorry,
How are we ensuring quality over the lifespan, not just assessment at the start?
Right, shall we?
I think I'll ask
Lydia to come in. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have quite a robust quality assurance process in place for home care, by which we have a set of KPIs that are regularly updated that include electronic call monitoring data to see when carers are actually arriving and going and how long they're staying for, involving resident feedback. So we contact residents on a quarterly basis. We previously did this about a month ago, and around 95% of residents are satisfied with the services. And whenever there are issues, we work in partnership with the provider alongside our provider quality handbook to get them back on track again.
Okay, are there any other questions, colleagues? No? All right, fine. So colleagues, we're now moving to the recommendations on big page number 16 on the supplementary report. For the reasons set out in the paper, Cabinet is asked to agree 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5. Are those recommendations all agreed? Those are agreed. Thank you very much. Now we're jumping back onto the item 9. It's on big page number 411. And we had got to the recommendations, and this relates to the acceptance of funding for the Connect to Work programme. And the reason why we wanted to come back to this is because we have the specific amount, because presently it says up to. So do we have that figure now?
Yes, so Mayor, if I can update, so under 8.1.1 in the report, there's the initially anticipated to be £5,470,632. That is the confirmed amount now. So the figure in 8.11 is correct, which is the same figure in the table in Appendix 2 in the report. The recommendation recommends acceptance of the grant up to 5.5, and you can see that the confirmed amount of grant is just under that, which is 5.470. 470.
It's 547.
Much for muchness, isn't it? Well, it's 500,000. Okay. All right. Is everyone satisfied with that? So that current 5.5 figure is actually 5.47 million. Okay, I'm going to replace that with that, so it's consistent.
Take out awaiting confirmation.
Yeah, so we're going to delete open bracket, awaiting final confirmation, close bracket. So 2.1 now reads, accept the allocation of Connect to Work grant funding of up to 5.47 million between June 2025 to 31st of March 2030, and enter into the agreement with Local London as a sub-regional lead. We delete up to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
specific now.
So, and deleting the words up to words. Right. Understood?
Great.
Yep.
Okay, so recommendations as amended, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, colleagues, before we part, I just wanted to note, can we just note formally agenda item 13, which is exclusion of press and public? Is that agreed? Okay, and then can we just formally note agenda item 14, the exempt appendix for agenda item 1, Noom Living, Bow Street and Montford Road asset refurbishment proposal. Is that noted?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.